This weekend, we had a pretty major leak surface about the Nintendo Switch 2, and it helps explain a lot about what's going on with all these mysterious game key cards that keep popping up. In fact, some of the games getting game key versions don't even make sense unless you understand this leak. So today, we're diving into what this leak from Arc System Works tells us, how it connects to those confusing physical release decisions, and why it looks like publishers currently have almost no choice when it comes to cartridge sizes for the Switch 2. If you enjoy content like this and want to stay up to date on the latest gaming news and rumors, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. So, here's what's been rumored for a while. The Nintendo Switch 2 uses cartridges like the original, but supposedly there's a very limited selection of cartridge capacities, maybe just 2 options. That rumor alone didn't explain why so many games, even tiny ones, were going the game key route instead of using a proper cartridge. But now, according to new leaked documentation from Arc System Works, it looks like it might be even fewer options than we thought. First off, the leak. This comes from what appears to be a hack of Arc System Works, the developers behind titles like Guilty Gear and BlazBlue. Info from this breach has been slowly surfacing online, including some surprising documentation about their plans for Switch 2 development. For example, there's a hint that the Switch 2 may have been originally scheduled to launch in March, but then got delayed to June, possibly due to supply chain or software readiness issues. That lines up with Nintendo's expected June Direct and release lineup, with Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza dropping close together. But here's the big one. Based on these internal documents, developers like Arc are currently only working with 2 formats for physical releases, a full 64GB cartridge and a game key card, which is essentially a glorified download code in a physical shell. The code name for the game key format is Potion, and someone online made a clever comparison. It's like a potion bottle that you fill with a downloaded game. Honestly, it fits a little too well. This is huge because it means developers don't have access to any smaller, cheaper cartridge sizes. No 4GB, no 8GB, no 16GB options, just 64GB or nothing. So even if your game is tiny, like 2GB or 4GB, your choices are either pay up for a massive, oversized 64GB cartridge, or go with the game key format. And that explains why we're seeing games like Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, a tiny game, releasing as a game key. It's not because it needs to be downloaded, it's because there's no financially sensible cartridge to use instead. At the moment, only a very small number of third-party titles are using the full 64GB cartridge. According to GameSpot and others compiling the data, these include Cyberpunk 2077, Ultimate Edition, Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma, Story of Seasons, Grand Bazaar, Daemon X Machina, Titanic SC, and that's about it. Compare that to the growing list of game key releases, and you can see just how rare it is. Now here's the theory. Nintendo may have intentionally chosen to offer only a 64GB cartridge to keep manufacturing simple and scalable. The idea is that over time, this could bring costs down, and eventually third parties might jump on board once that happens. But that's a big assumption, because right now, a 64GB cart is expensive, and third-party publishers, they're already leaning heavily into digital, and they don't seem interested in paying Nintendo more just for a physical SKU, especially if it's mostly just for collectors. Even Nintendo's pricing choices raise eyebrows. Both Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza reportedly use 64GB cartridges. Yet Mario Kart is priced at $80, while Donkey Kong is $70. Why? Likely because Mario Kart is seen as a longer-lasting title with a massive multiplayer audience, while Donkey Kong seems more like a single-player platformer. But again, both games are using the same cartridge format, so price isn't based on manufacturing, it's purely based on value perception. Ultimately, this all plays into the larger conversation about physical versus digital. Game key cards blur the line. They're technically physical, but they don't have the game on them. You still have to download the entire thing. For collectors and physical media fans, it's a major disappointment. One of the Switch's biggest selling points was that you could plug in a cartridge and start playing. No mandatory downloads, no install times, no internet required. Now, for many Switch 2 games, even small ones, that's no longer true. So, does this explain everything? I think it kind of does. This leak lines up with what we've been seeing. Very few full cartridges, tons of game keys, and confusing choices from publishers that now make a lot more sense. Will Nintendo add more cartridge sizes in the future, like a cheaper 8GB option for indie games? Maybe, but based on what we've seen so far, it doesn't look like that's in the cards right now. But what do you think? Should Nintendo offer more cartridge options for developers? Are you okay with the rise of game key cards, or are you sticking to digital anyway? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed the breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.